My son's new friend revealed our family's dark secret. Before we begin the story, make sure to subscribe to our channel and never miss more incredible stories every day. Noah's new friend set down his fork and said my maiden name. He didn't stumble. He didn't ask if he'd pronounced it right. He looked at me the way you look at a photograph before deciding whether to frame it or burn it. I'm Mara, 41, assistant registrar at the community college and keeper of every tiny calendar square that keeps this family running. My job isn't glamorous, but it's sturdy. Enrollment deadlines, hold releases, transcript pulls, signed affidavits for graduates who need the world to acknowledge what they survived to finish school. I built our life on checklists: pack lunches, pay the gas bill, text Noah after practice, never mention Riverside Road. Protecting my son matters more than my pulse. That's the math I do before I breathe. We were 3 bites into Tuesday meatloaf when Eli, polite, observant, all elbows and watchful eyes, asked whether our church still kept paper ledgers. Noah rolled his eyes. "Dude, it's 2025, he said, sauce on his grin. My husband, Dan, chuckled. I kept chewing, tried to make a little boat out of mashed potatoes, tried not to set off any flares. Eli's curiosity didn't feel like curiosity. It felt like choreography. He complimented the jam I'd set out for cornbread, and then asked how long we'd lived near the river. Not in Maple Glen, not off Birch, but near the river. A camera in my ribs clicked. I poured water and asked about English class. He answered with dates, teachers, a test on the 19th. His recall was surgical. Noah was thrilled to have a friend who liked the same music and could teach him card flourishes. I wanted that for him, the ordinary hum of teenage belonging. But ordinary has a tell. It doesn't research you. Is Mara short for anything? Eli asked, casual as a weather report. I smiled. It's just Mara. He nodded like he'd confirmed a coordinate. The silverware chimed when Dan set his fork down. Noah kept talking about track tryouts. I counted, quietly, which drawer the old documents were in, whether the key still stuck, whether the past would stay where I'd boxed it. Then Eli said my maiden name like a key turning. Hosting a teenager is mostly logistics. Shoes by the door, pizza on speed dial, a spare hoodie for the evening chill. We set out board games and let the boys take over the living room with the glorious mess of homework and laughter. At school pickup, I watched from the lot as Noah and Eli leaned into each other's jokes, shoulder to shoulder, that quicksilver joy that makes you forgive the universe for every cracked place. At home, Dan pretended not to be outmatched by algebra, and Aunt Val stopped by with her bottomless tote, apples, coupons, a church bulletin, and one of those hug-and-release looks that says, I see your seams. My rule is simple, almost religious. Truth keeps families safe. It's why I label the leftovers, why I tell Noah when I'm late, why I taught him to call when his stomach whispers no. But truth has a cousin, silence, that masquerades as safety when you have too much to lose. At last month's PTA meeting, a whisper slithered behind me. Her name used to be something else. I kept placing raffle tickets into paper cups, smile lacquered, palms damp. When I turned, I saw only friendly faces, the kind that bake casseroles and vote in every election. The kind that never forget. Eli fit our rhythms easily, which is its own alert. He always helped clear plates, lined silverware by size, listened for the dishwasher's beep. My mom likes order, he said once soft. Makes the day behave. I wondered where she was and why he always said, likes, in the tense you use for a habit you can't promise. He asked Dan about fishing spots. He asked me about the college's record system. Do people ever try to seal things? He asked, eyes on the drying rack. Sometimes, I said slow. There's a process. What kind? Court filings, affidavits, sometimes a judge's order. He nodded, then smiled for Noah like a curtain opening. But someone had already decided which truth would be told tonight. The first odd thing was a question about Riverside Road, delivered like a joke and left on the table to ferment. The second was Eli recognizing a street name I hadn't spoken in a decade, not since we moved to this side of town, farther from the bend where the river gnaws at its banks. I bike a lot, he said, shrugging. Maps stick in my head. Noah envied that, said his head only kept song lyrics and the digits of Wi-Fi passwords. I laughed, but my knuckles whitened around a mug. After I tucked towels into the linen closet, I checked the hall camera. Eli never lingered in rooms alone. He didn't snoop. He didn't need to. He asked immaculate questions and let gravity do the rest. That week, he pointed to the church bulletin on our fridge and said, "They still keep attendance in notebooks?" My eyes tracked the line items: bake sale, teen outreach, basement repairs, like they might rearrange themselves if I blinked hard enough. On Friday, I found a note in the pocket of Noah's hoodie. Not from Eli, not exactly. It was a small square of paper with a date and time: June 3rd, 2015, 11:42 a.m. A clerk's window number: 4, a file, C, 18427. The handwriting was tidy, deliberate, like someone practiced making the past legible. I searched my memory for that day and felt the fluorescent buzz of the clerk's office wash over me. The air there always smells like printer toner and impatience. You stand in line with people trying to climb out of holes, people building small ladders out of notarized promises. I told myself it could be anything: a school project on local government, a prank, a coincidence. I told myself names repeat. I told myself I'd thrown away the old key to the storage unit, that the overdue notices had stopped years ago, that the church ledger, if it still lived, would not be the ledger that knew me. I smiled, but my hands kept counting years I never admitted. The night everything accelerated, our group chat pinged with a misdirected text. It wasn't meant for me, but phones invent mistakes when consciences want to confess. A photo appeared: chain-link fence, a sun-blinked padlock, the number 312 painted on a corrugated door. My heart reverse parked. That storage facility sits off Wren Avenue, past the tire shop, across from the scrapyard where seagulls fight over silver wrappers. We stopped paying for the unit in 2016. Aunt Val talked the manager into giving us one grace month, because church people don't leave their mess for other folks. Then the invoices vanished, or I convinced myself they had. At 7:13 p.m., while the meatloaf rested beneath foil, another message landed: a crisp shot of a page that looked like a ledger, columns, dates, a margin note. Teen outreach donation, cash. The month matched the month we stopped sleeping through thunder. Wrong chat. Noah typed, reflexively. Eli replied with a string of apologies and a laughing emoji that didn't laugh. I set my phone face down and listened to the oven's fan hum the way machines hum when they think no one's listening. After dinner, Eli asked if we ever donated to the church's river cleanup. "We used to," I said. "Small amounts." Dan busied himself with plates. "Every little bit helps," Eli said, too gently. He slipped his phone into his hoodie. Outside, the wind moved through the maple like a quiet crowd. I told myself to breathe in square counts like the therapist taught me: for in, for hold, for out, for rest. I failed math. The past was outside our house with a flashlight and a property map, tracing lines it already knew. I imagined the storage unit yawning open like a mouth, boxes labeled winter, photos, miscellaneous, and one I never labeled at all. The dishwasher beeped. Dan kissed my temple. Noah shot cards from his knuckles like magic. A notification badge pulsed like a heartbeat I pretended not to hear. Pressure stacks in domestic increments. A plate chipped and carefully turned. A bill slid under a cereal box. A glance that holds its breath. Dan wanted to believe in normal. "He's a kid," he said, voice low as the fridge's motor. "Don't pin adult shadows on him." I wanted to too, but shadow recognizes its caster. Noah felt the tension like a draft. "Is something wrong?" he asked, trying to lace humor into the knot. "Is this about me being late for curfew?" "It's not you," I said. "It's never you." Aunt Val arrived with a casserole and an expression that had opinions. "Heard a whisper," she announced, dropping her tote. PDA Queen Bee asked if our family still donates in cash. She thudded the casserole down like punctuation. Dan slid a hand across his jaw. "We did," I said. "We stopped." "Stopped," she repeated, like a scrap of paper tested for watermarks. "And the storage unit?" "Closed," I said too fast. "Closed," she echoed and sat. "If this is the old thing, it won't stay buried. Don't pretend not to know the shape of your own ghost." Noah's face pinched. "What old thing?" I caught Dan's eye. "We had rehearsed this once, in a therapist's office with rain stalking the window." "Adult paperwork," I answered. "Boring." "Boring," Aunt Val snorted. "Paper that can uproot houses is never boring." Noah looked between us, then at Eli's name pulsing on his phone. "He's coming over Saturday," he said, voice small. We're supposed to edit that English video. Let him, Dan said. We're not crazy. Crazy is a comfort when it's a shield. It's a curse when it's right. I washed a dish that wasn't dirty. The faucet hissed. I remembered the affidavit's weight, how the clerk's window light flattened it to something thinner than consequences. Aunt Val touched my arm with a gentleness that made me ache. Mara, she said, decide now whether you're running or telling. If this is the old thing, it will come walking. Saturday morning, I found it by accident, the way people find sinkholes, one soft step and the ground rearranges. Eli and Noah were editing their English video at the dining table, headphones like halos. I carried laundry past them and saw a folded sheet half tucked beneath Eli's notebook. It wasn't homework. It was a photocopy of a ledger page. The church's teen outreach, June 2015, 3 entries in a week labeled anonymous donation, cash, each for $400. In the margin, a faint pencil note. Riverside. My mouth salted over. You dropped something? I said casual. He blinked, too calm. Oh, thanks, he said, and slid it away. After they left for the park, I opened the banking app one pretend not to memorize. In 2015, we bled our savings in strange increments. For $100 withdrawals, 3 in 7 days, then gaps, then a $1,200 cashier's check photographed by a teller with a cheerful caption. The note's field read, donation. Dan had told me, back then, that generosity sometimes wears urgency. He'd asked if I could trust him long enough to make a mistake that did good. I had nodded like a church lady who keeps secrets in her hem. I scrolled further. On June 3, 2015, 11:42 a.m. A debit at the county clerk's office. $25 for a certified copy, $12 for notarization, $15 for an archive pull. Window 4. File C, 18427. The same numbers on the note in Noah's hoodie. I wanted to throw my phone into the sink and run garbage disposal over the years. Instead, I called Aunt Val. She didn't say hello. She said, tell me what you're holding before it burns you. I told her. The line went quiet except for her breath and the soft scratch of her pencil on a grocery list I knew she didn't need. That's the month we fixed a lie with another lie, she said. If Eli is walking you backward, he knows something we never told. Dan came home with mulch and the look he wears when building solves what words can't. I held up the photocopy without speaking. His shoulders fell, slow as dusk. We helped a family, he said. We didn't hurt one. What did we pay for, Dan? I whispered. His eyes begged yesterday for a do-over and found none. Not charity, he said. Silence. I don't know how to be a detective, but I know how to keep a paper trail from tripping me. The county website gave me only the shape of the thing, indexes, and fee schedules. So I went in person, like a pilgrim with a map someone else drew. The clerk's office smelled like scuffed tile and patience. Window 4 was manned by a woman whose badge said Carmen. She wore readers on a chain and guarded her smile like a drawer key. I'm looking for a record, I said, voice steady. Public, if possible. I gave her the file number. She typed. Time thickened. That's sealed, she said. But the docket's public. Names, attorneys, dates. She slid a printout toward me, as if handing over a hot pan. My maiden name stung from the page. Opposite column, Riverview Community Church. A line below, affidavit of incident, received. Another, settlement acknowledged, confidential. Outside, the sky stretched clean and cruel. I sat on a concrete planter and photographed the printout for myself. The way you take a picture of your own hands to remember you're real. The timestamp blinked. 2:22 p.m. My phone pinged. Noah, Eli says hi. A second ping. A link to an Instagram reel. 2 boys laughing, a deck of cards, a flourish clean enough to be a trick. I drove to the church. The office smelled like cinnamon gum and mimeograph nostalgia. Mrs. Haynes, who'd baptized half this town, still kept ledgers in blue-lined notebooks like a love letter to order. Repairs cost more than faith, she said, sliding a volume my way. Her fingers hesitated over June 2015. Habit paused at history. Is this about the river accident? She asked softly. What accident? She blinked at me with the mercy of someone who remembers you as a casserole, not a signature. A cyclist, she whispered. A boy's father. Not killed, but near enough to tell God his mind. On page 104, anonymous donations winked like a bruise beneath makeup. A side note in looping pen. Outreach to family. Gas cards. Meals. Repairs. Repairs. Repairs of what? Of whom? A name appeared on a folded sticky note tucked between pages, like a seed saved for spring. Witness. D. Whitlow. 9:13 p.m. Riverside Bend. Gray sedan. One headlight. I spread documents across our kitchen table like I was setting a place for a ghost. The docket printout. The ledger photocopies. A photo of the storage unit door. Its number like a dare. Aunt Val arrived with black coffee and her old reading glasses perched like a battlement. We're past the maybe, she said. Say the what. The what is a settlement, I answered. A near miss made into paperwork. Affidavit filed. Donations that match our withdrawals. Church outreach notes that smell like bandages. And the car. One headlight, I said. Her face sank into a memory we had both painted over. Dan stood in the doorway, splinters dusting his palms from the mulch bags. It was my car, he said. I brushed a cyclist. He didn't fall. He shouted. I panicked. He met my eyes, then looked at the floor. I went back. I called. I paid. I thought it was enough. Aunt Val shook her head. Enough is what truth decides, not guilt. I pulled a name from the sticky note and tasted it. Whitlow, I said. Witness. Dan's jaw tightened. He saw a gray sedan, Dan said. A lot of gray sedans exist. But only one with our insurance check cleared on June 5th, I said. Only one with a sealed docket that spells my maiden name like a prayer and a threat. The what? Then, a hit and run that didn't fully run, a confession braided with convenience, money that translated harm into food on a table that was not ours. But the question clawed, why does Eli know my name? I remembered his two careful hands and the way he said, likes, about his mother like she was away on an errand that takes years. I pulled the storage unit key from the drawer I swore I'd forgotten. The teeth of it glinted like a dare. Noah texted from upstairs. Eli wants to come by tomorrow. Cool? I typed, yes, and then erased it. I typed, sure, and swallowed the taste of the word. If Eli is the map, I am already where he's leading. I decided to build a record no one could rearrange. Screenshots of app withdrawals. Photographs of ledger lines with rulers for scale. Audio memos timestamped as I described each page. I emailed myself everything with subject lines like kitchen table, 8:43 p.m. ledger P. 104-inch and clerk printout, 2:22 p.m. docket header. Evidence isn't a story until you tie knots where hands can't slip. I called the non-emergency number and asked for Detective Brooks, a name Aunt Val trusted from years of church security lectures and neighborhood watch flyers. He called back with a voice that sounded like boots on gravel. You're asking about a sealed matter, he said. Seals leak when people poke them. What are you hoping for? Safety, I said. And for my son not to be ambushed by the past at our table. He exhaled into the line. Then stop letting the past control the seating chart. Bring what you've got. I can't unseal without a judge, but I can confirm what's public and point at what's missing. I looped Dan in and nearly lost him. We already paid, he said. We already apologized. To who? I asked. A name on a ledger? An empty box in a storage unit? Or a boy who knows my maiden name? At that, he flinched. That night, I opened the storage unit. The air tasted like dust in thrift stores. Boxes slumped in the corners, labels curling. In an unmarked banker's box, a folder waited with the patience of a verdict. Photocopies of the affidavit, a letterhead from the church, a handwritten note. For gas and groceries. Keep receipts, if possible. A second folder held photographs of Dan's car, one headlight cloudy, a scrape on the bumper like a fingernail crescent. Receipts for repairs. Date stamped. June 5th, 2015, 9:07 a.m. On the bottom of the box, a photo slid loose. A man on crutches outside the courthouse steps, a boy standing half behind him, 5 or 6, narrow shoulders, eyes like a ledger turned toward sunlight. I didn't need a caption to know those eyes are now seated at my table. I tried for normal. I set the table, poured iced tea, asked the boys about their video edits. Eli used politeness like armor. He didn't clank, he glided. We added captions, he said. Accessibility matters. Dan nodded as if anyone discussing good deeds absolved a backlog of bad decisions. Aunt Val arrived with salad and a warning stare that could make lies sweat. We talked about school board elections, potholes, and the weather's old man complaints. The river rose last week and receded with its usual sigh, like a body settling sleep. Then Noah dropped a fork, metal against tile, and Eli said, without looking up, "Do you ever drive Riverside Road at night?" The room tightened like a fist around a secret. Dan sipped nothing. I set my glass down carefully because hands remember shatter. "Rarely," I answered. "Lot of cyclists," Eli said. "Hard to see that bend." "It is," I said, calm as a defused bomb. Aunt Val cleared her throat. "Some nights are hard to see even in daylight." Eli met my eyes. "And some nights you return because running is a circle." Noah frowned. "What are we talking about?" "English metaphors," Eli said softly, an apology wedged into grammar. I stood, collected plates that didn't need collecting, and looked out the window toward the dark ribbon of trees that conceals the river like a sentence hides its claws. My phone buzzed. A voicemail transcription from a number labeled Whitlow Auto. "Saw your car back then," it read. I kept a copy. I didn't know whether God jokes or only arranges echoes, but my knees unlocked, and I sat. "Enough," Dan said, voice cracking. "We did our best." "Did we?" I asked. "Or did we do what we could afford?" Eli's hands were steady on his glass. His eyes were not. "You can ask me what you're afraid to say, Mrs. Calder. I booked the records room at the precinct for Tuesday, for 30 p.m. A fluorescent cathedral where truth hums and people barter with consequence. Detective Brooks met us with a clipboard and the kind of nod you give a storm you've already sandbagged for. "Here's what I can put on the table," he said, sliding paperwork into neat phalanxes. "Docket heading, unsealed. Insurance claim records, public. Church ledger notes you brought, admissible as business records if verified. Affidavit itself, sealed, but we can discuss its existence." He glanced at Eli, who sat between Noah and Aunt Val like a hinge. "Your choice whether the kids stay," he added. "They stay," I said. "No more ghosts babysitting our dinner." Dan rubbed his temples. "This is theater," he muttered. "We already handled it." Brooks's brows lifted. "Handled implies closure. Seals are not closures, they are containers." He touched the ledger photocopy. 3 $400 donations in 1 week. Gas cards and grocery notes. Then a $1,200 cashier's check. Then repairs. He tapped the repair receipt I'd found. Neat cadence for panic. Eli's voice entered like a lowercase letter. Can I ask something?" Brooks gestured. "Did anyone ever apologize to the boy?" Dan flinched. "I called the church," he said. "They said the family preferred privacy." Eli nodded once, solemn. "Privacy can be a muzzle when grown-ups pick it." I looked at him like looking could build a bridge. "Why do you know my maiden name?" I asked. He inhaled, slow. "Because I traced the ledger to the docket to your notarized signature, and the signature to your old transcript request at the college where you work now," he said, voice shaking but precise. "Because the boy on crutches is my father, and the smaller boy hiding behind him is me." Noah's breath hitched like a tire on gravel. Dan's lips opened, closed, opened. Aunt Val reached for my hand and missed, then found it. Brooks wrote one word on his pad with patient pressure, motive. I didn't know if I wanted a projector or darkness. Brooks chose both. Lights dim, documents bright. On the wall, the docket header glowed. My maiden name and the church nested like two magnets fused by convenience. Next slide. Insurance claim summary. Dates neatly choreographed. June 3rd incident report. June 5th repair. June 7th cashier's check. June 10th note. Settlement acknowledged. Parties agree to confidentiality. Another slide. The ledger entries. Mrs. Haynes had confirmed their handwriting over the phone, voice trembling with the weight of tidy sins. "We meant to help," she had said. "We never meant to hide harm." Brooks clicked again. Email printouts I'd pulled from the storage unit. Dan to Pastor Rick. "We'll cover costs. Just keep Noah out of the rumor mill." Pastor Rick to Dan. "Bless you for stepping up. The family wants quiet." "What family?" Eli asked, eyes fixed forward, jaw locked. Brooks turned to him. "Yours," he said softly. Eli's hands opened and closed, fishing for steadiness. "My father did okay after," he said. "Physically. But he stopped writing at night. He stopped sleeping well. He stopped trusting. He swallowed. I found the photo outside the courthouse when I turned 10, in a box of papers we keep because they're heavy. He told me we had a settlement, but not a story. So I found the story." Dan stood, then sat, The body short-circuit for shame. I went back, he said, voice stripped. I called. I paid. I begged the church to guide me. And they did, Aunt Val said dryly. Toward the offering plate. Brooks drew a rectangle on his pad labeled Y. Ego, fear, protection, manipulation, he read. Which mask fits? My mask, I said, surprising myself, is mother. I signed what protected Noah first. Eli turned, finally, to look at me. And what protected me last? Noah whispered. Eli, I'm sorry. As if apology could lift a decade. The projector hummed, warm and merciless, while the seal between past and present softened. Truth doesn't end things. It rearranges the furniture and dares you to walk at night. By Thursday, the school rumor mill had converted English video partners into boys from feuding families, as if Shakespeare took attendance. A neighbor who always waved began studying her shrubs whenever I passed. At work, my supervisor asked, carefully, if any press might call about a personal matter intersecting with public records. I smiled like a person not unraveling and promised nothing dramatic, which is the biggest lie small towns tell themselves. Brooks filed a memo summarizing what could be discussed and what remained sealed. He also facilitated a mediated conversation with Eli's father, Mr. Rios, in a room that smelled like coffee and apology. Dan spoke first, throat gravelly. I was careless, he said. I chose quiet because it offered me mercy. Mr. Rios listened without blinking. Mercy given by the person who needed it most isn't mercy, he said. Eli sat beside him, spine and arrow. We agreed to a formal, written apology to fund a community bike safety program, to cover counseling if requested. None of it felt like heroism. It felt like rent overdue to a house we still inhabit. The church issued a statement about a process we regret, which is how institutions apologize to avoid verbs. Mrs. Haynes cried and offered cookies, which healed nothing and still mattered. Noah trembled between loyalty and comprehension. Did you lie to me? He asked one night, small in the doorway. Or did you tell me a version that made it easier to be your kid? Yes, I said, because the only solvent for lies is accuracy. He nodded and left the door open, which meant the conversation wasn't done punishing us. At the grocery store, Whitlow from the sticky note cornered me by the grapes. Saw your boy with the other boy, he said. They look like teammates. They're trying, I answered. He tipped his cap, then added, Road remembers rubber better than people remember truth. I went home and erased the word closure from my vocabulary. We made appointments like we were building scaffolding. Therapy for Noah and for us, separate and together. A Saturday workshop on bike visibility with the community center. A meeting with Pastor Rick where Aunt Val attended as our human lie detector. No more envelopes, she said, drilling holes into the future with her stare. If you help, it will be in the light, with receipts stapled to the sunscreen. Dan agreed, voice scraped down to the grain. I don't want to be a man who buys quiet, he said. I wrote what we would and would not do, in language a judge could frame. We will fund the bike program for 3 years. We will not ask for names beyond what is offered. We will sign letters of accountability that can be read aloud without shame. We will not speak for the Rios family or correct the story to protect our comfort. I printed the page and taped it to the inside of the pantry where the cereal lives, because accountability should mix with daily hunger. Eli came by, not to film, but to sit. Noah made tea he didn't really like, which is love in a teenage accent. They talked about ordinary things, history grades, a coach who played favorites, a shoe with a sole separating like a marriage that didn't get counseling in time. Then Eli said, My dad might come to the workshop. Noah said, Mine will be there early, setting out cones. They looked at each other the way you look at a bridge that still holds even after the flood. At therapy, the counselor asked me to describe my rule about truth. Truth keeps families safe, I said, then added, except when I believed safety required silence. She nodded like a metronome forgiving tempo drift. Rewrite the rule, she said. Truth keeps families safe enough to survive the consequences. That night, I moved the storage box from the unit into our living room and labeled it boldly, Riverside, open. Later, Dan whispered, Does that mean the worst is over? And I answered with a boundary instead of a wish. I used to think love was a shelter you keep spotless so guests never see the mud at the door. Now I think love is a porch light you leave on even when you're afraid of who might knock. We opened the box. We told the story out loud to the people who were owed it. We wrote apologies with nouns, not fog. Noah learned that parents fail their own rules and can still rebuild. I learned that motherhood isn't a contract to disappear myself in exchange for a quiet life. Dan learned that paying money doesn't absolve a debt to truth. Eli learned that seeking answers can rearrange a family without breaking it entirely. For anyone watching, document what you find: dates, amounts, locations, file numbers, because memory edits itself to survive. Use simple words: sealed record, settlement, affidavit, subpoena, ledger. Ask yourself who benefits from privacy and who is silenced by it. If you think confessing will detonate your home, remember that secrets leak through vents and wilt the walls. Go to the clerk's window. Photocopy the page. Write your commitments and tape them where you reach every morning. Apologize in writing, and give the harmed person control over whether to read it aloud or burn it to ash. 2 weeks after the workshop, I watched Eli and Noah adjust reflective straps on a row of kids' helmets while Dan set cones like bright punctuation marks. Mr. Rios stood with a coffee, shoulders easier. Aunt Val called out, "Heads up," and a dozen small bikes lifted, balancing like statements learning their verbs. The river slid by, same as always, same as never, and for once I didn't measure how far we'd moved from the bend. I measured, instead, how the light caught the spokes and made the past look briefly new. And when a new parent asked if the program took volunteers, I handed her a pin and a promise.